Welcome to the first in our tutorials covering the specific skills that you need to produce the best coursework essays possible. Today we're going to cover the fundamental skill at the heart of the coursework, comparing your two texts in an insightful and original way. You can see how this fits in with the next 9 of these tutorials in the schedule. By the end of this series of lessons, you will be ready to go and write your 3,000-word essay. Comparison of your two texts can and should encompass all of the aspects of studying literature that you have developed over your A-level so far, and indeed that you started at GCSE. You should now be in the habit of asking yourself, what are the overall messages of each text? Which elements of each writer's context and background influence them to put this message across? Which particular form or genre did they choose to convey the message, and why did they do that? How have they structured the text? Which patterns of language and symbolism have they regularly used throughout the text to convey all of this? Which theories apply to both texts? And what have other people said about each text separately? Has anyone compared the two of them before? Let's take an example from outside of English literature so that you can best see how you could and probably should approach this comparison. If you were to compare Beyoncé's Hold Up with the Yeah Yeah Yeahs song Maps, you might be tempted to start by explaining how both lyrics use the same phrase, "They don't love you like I love you." Now, this is a surface level comparison and doesn't really do anything to answer the question, why do the two songs include this phrase? A more successful comparison would start by exploring how Karen O, lead singer of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, wrote the song Maps about her boyfriend Andrew. Now, Maps reportedly stands for My Andrew Please Stay, expressing her distress and fear at being abandoned. Now, Beyoncé's use of exactly the same lyrics are for a very different reason. We all know the story of Jay-Z's reported infidelity and how Beyoncé wrote the whole Lemonade album as an expression of defiance and dignity in suffering, overlaying her personal sense of having been betrayed with poignant messages about the experience of black women in 21st century America. Starting with one small similarity that the two songs have, the lyrics, we can explore the many complex differences that define each as separate works of art which are equally successful in their own way. That's the way to approach your coursework comparison. The mark scheme for your coursework spells this out. To achieve the top band of the mark scheme for A01, that's your argument and the way you express it, you have to be critical and evaluative. In other words, don't just say that the two texts do X, Y, or Z. Explore to what extent they do X, Y, or Z, and explain why. For A04, that's your comparison of the two texts, you have to make sophisticated connections between the two of them, and you have to evaluate them. To what extent are the two texts similar or different, and again, what's the most appropriate way to explain why that is? Have a look at this example paragraph from a top band piece of coursework. I recommend you pause the video and spend a minute reading it. The first sentence explores one very specific conceptual way in which the Bloody Chamber short story collection is like Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. The concept present in both texts is the stereotypical expectations of women's role in society. To some extent, both writers have the same overall effect on their audience. Each author was led to this overall message by specific aspects of their context. Something about their respective contexts made each author approach the same theme in crucially different ways. And overall, the two texts are different, so there is one specific but definitive difference in the way that each author presents their argument. At the start of this essay, the student has drilled down into these specifics. By establishing right at the start the crucial difference between the texts, they have narrowed the focus of their whole 3,000 word coursework essay sufficiently enough. It's clearly going to be an evaluative and sophisticated answer to their question about the role of women in each book. The key to being able to whittle down your coursework focus in the same way is to make sure you consider all of the possible ways to compare your two texts first. Then choose the most appropriate from within that widespread net of different comparisons. So this is what you're going to do. Create a Venn diagram of all of the possible ways that you could compare your texts. It should be as big as possible. Do it in rough, on a large piece of paper or big word processing document. When you submit it to me, I want to see that you've considered maybe slightly wacky, unusual interpretations of the main messages of your two texts and how they're similar or different. Be creative and original.